Hello, my name's Dr. Vicky Cleek and I'm a consultant psychiatrist with a special interest in ADHD. And today we're going to be looking at ADHD and the effect of it on relationships. So buckle up because this might get emotional. So this module, which is in conjunction with my free to download from my website, Women's Guide to ADHD Mastery, which is all about adjusting to a diagnosis of ADHD for the first time. This section on intimate relationships is a way of helping you think back over your life, the relationships you've had, and the impact that the ADHD may have had on that and on you. So what do we know about the impact of ADHD on relationships? If we think back to the core features of ADHD, that'll help us think about what difficulties someone with ADHD will commonly have in their relationship potentially. And that includes difficulty regulating attention, difficulty regulating your emotions, having a poor working memory, being disorganized, being more easily distracted from what you're supposed to be doing, problems regulating your action so that you put things off, and impulsivity. Well, if you have difficulty regulating your attention on things, then you're going to find it very difficult to listen when someone's talking to you. You're going to then be less likely to remember what somebody has actually told you, and that doesn't even take into account the weaknesses in that short-term memory, which I think is related to the difficulties in paying attention and sticking with one thought at a time. You can hyper-focus on interesting and novel things, but if your relationship gets stale or long-term, then you can find yourself feeling bored and looking for excitement somewhere else in another relationship, and this can cause obviously relationship breakdowns and lack of attention in a relationship, so that your partner does not feel that you're important to them. Being easily distracted means that you don't do the tasks that you said you were going to do, you don't finish the tasks that you said you were going to do, and that can lead to tension in a relationship, not unsurprisingly. When you don't pay attention to where you put things, it means that you lose things more frequently because you haven't paid attention to where you put it down, and it's sort of absent-mindedly. And it also means that if you're seeing everything, because people with ADHD find it very difficult to focus down onto one thing, particularly when it's a mundane or an interesting task, like, looking for things in the same house that you've been in for years, it means that you often can't find something that's right in front of your nose. You don't register it, and sometimes just not looking for it can sometimes make it easier to find. These are all things that can cause tension in a relationship, particularly when both yourself and your partner don't understand that as a difficulty. Difficulty regulating emotions. So although it's not a core feature in terms of DSM-4 and ICD-10 descriptions of ADHD, I think in the next iteration of those, it's undoubtedly going to be in there, because there's no doubt about it. Those with ADHD really struggle to regulate their emotions in the same way as they struggle to regulate their attention. This leads to having shorter tempers, which are often very, very intense but short-lived. However, for everyone else living with that, it can be very difficult, because the intensity of these tempers can cause wreckage and long-term ripple effects. Those with ADHD get more easily frustrated, which is related to the difficulties in waiting. So if you can't, get your computer to work, or you can't open a package or get into it, a person with ADHD will get crosser faster. Often people with ADHD are labelled as emotional. This is related to the underlying difficulties that they have in terms of the lack of dopamine or adrenaline in the right places in the brain. So as I said, these short-lived, very, very intense emotional outbursts can seem very out of proportion to the situation. And for people without ADHD or without an understanding of ADHD, it can appear quite frightening and also silly. But to the individual who's living it, they feel that really, really strongly, that emotion. And very frequently, I get patients who find it very difficult to sort of let go of emotional situations they've had in the past. And if they start remembering that situation, it brings the emotions right back. So rather than most individuals being able to intellectually think back, but the emotions often fade. For people with ADHD, that emotional link and intensity often doesn't go away. And it's like they're living back in that situation again. It's very visceral for them. So those with ADHD often have a poor working memory. So they often can't hold on to a telephone number in their head without rehearsing it over and over again until they can write it down. And if they're distracted by an internal thought or something else going around them, like a noise or someone talking to them, they will lose that information and will have to seek it out again, and that can cause frustration as well as mistakes. So that forgetfulness means that you don't remember what someone's told you, and for a partner that can feel like you don't care for them, that they're not important. It also is related to being out of sight, out of mind. So if your partner goes away, you may forget to reply to their text if you don't immediately respond. And that neglect of relationships can lead to them dwindling. You need the working memory to get memory into your longer term memory for long-term memories. And so people with ADHD can often miss things that everyone else sees and remembers. So if something happens in a relationship and you have forgotten how you dealt with it, you haven't managed to learn that new skill of how to deal with a difficulty in a relationship, you might make the same mistakes again and again. You forget that your partner likes things done in a certain way and they've told you that, and you haven't managed to retain that. So often people with ADHD need to learn the same lessons several times before they get completely consolidated in their long-term memory. So the other issue that can happen with people with ADHD is they have something in mind that they need to, some information that they need to pass on to somebody else, and they are fearful that if they don't say it immediately, they're going to immediately forget it. And so that can lead to them interrupting others in the middle of conversations. Obviously, that can cause friction. Disorganization. So those with ADHD often get overwhelmed by the multitude of options that they struggle with being able to hold in their head at any one time to be able to sift through and decide on a course of action. So that can lead to feeling either overwhelmed and cross and anxious, or can lead to the person just sort of giving up entirely and not bothering to make decisions or work things out to make decisions. This means they can have problems with prioritizing, particularly if they've already organised their day in a certain way to prevent them from forgetting things, and a new situation comes along which needs to be integrated into that day, for example an emergency that needs to be dealt with, and that can lead to stress and feelings of overwhelm. And disorganisation in terms of time management. So people with ADHD are often underestimate how long it takes to get a task done. They try to fit too many tasks in. They leave them all to the last minute because they think there's more time left than there really is. And that leads to lateness or being very, very early to compensate, particularly in those who have got some comorbid autistic traits. They tend to pack too much in. So it's very interesting to hear about their experiences of holidays with their family, particularly if other members of the family don't have ADHD. What can happen is that they aren't allowed time to relax because the people with ADHD have constantly got plans in their head. They've got to be moving and doing stuff all the time. And again, these problems with regulating action, either to do it or to be able to stop doing it, that procrastination and the flip side to that coin is being hyper focused on an activity, meaning that you can't drag them away to do something else without them getting annoyed and or upset. Impulsivity, both physically but also verbally, can also be a problem in relationships between those with ADHD and everyone else. So you get the impulsive actions of spending, drinking, having sex, sometimes with inappropriate people at inappropriate times, impulsive eating, which can lead to excessive weight gain and ultimately can lead to binge eating disorders. Impulsivity in speech, so talking a lot, interrupting others, finishing off other people's sentences, a tendency to dominate conversations so other people can't get a word in edgeways, potentially oversharing information that later down the line you regret, should have kept in your own head. And sometimes all of this impulsivity speech can come across as being quite tactless and narcissistic. And I often see patients with ADHD who describe difficulties with their parents and descriptions of at least one of their parents as being narcissistic, when often it sounds that actually their underlying problem is that they've got undiagnosed ADHD. So what is the impact of ADHD on relationships themselves? Well, if you are partnered up with a partner who hasn't got ADHD, that partner may feel that you don't care about them. They may get quite angry at your inability to listen, not remembering things, being disorganized, not completing tasks that you said you would do. It can lead to them feeling quite exhausted because they're not allowed to relax on holidays. And they might compensate for that by micromanaging the partner, taking over not just those tasks that people with ADHD find very difficult, but other tasks because they sort of feel that their difficulties might extend further. And that, of course, can lead to a feeling of infantilization in the partner themselves. And to the partner who has got ADHD, that emotional dysregulation can lead to an excessive intensity initially because they're excited about the new relationship, but then can trickle away to a feeling of boredom, dissatisfaction, which can lead to them impulsively leaving that relationship, potentially having an affair. The difficulties, long-term difficulties with relationships can lead to the person with ADHD feeling guilty, a failure, unlovable and undeserving, or equally becoming quite dependent on their partner for being able to do all of these tasks over many years that they've always struggled to do, particularly when their partner dies in old age. And they might be left having to manage these things like the bills and money managing that they've never had to do before and they find very, very difficult. Partner with ADHD may say something through impulsivity that they don't actually mean, and is a thought that's come out of their mouth that can cause some serious damage in the relationship. And finally, the bit that's missing there is that because the person with ADHD finds it very difficult to filter information, they receive all this information, it can be quite overwhelming. They may not notice when there is a change in the relationship until it's too late for them to step in, particularly if the relationship is starting to break down. And what about the benefits of having ADHD or being partnered with somebody who's got ADHD? Well, I can assure you that there are some benefits to being with a partner who's got ADHD. They often don't hold a grudge, usually because they're poor working memory, so they will often forgive and forget, more so the forget rather than the forgive. They will always have lots of energy in the partnership. They will tend to want to do exciting new things, so can be the planners, but they need somebody else to check that those plans have been properly finalised and delivered appropriately. So on the booking for a holiday, that you've got all the children booked on the holiday, you've got the dates right, for example. Those people with ADHD are not afraid to try new things often. They enjoy change. They're often very good in disasters because that's when they can step up and hyper-focus and really show their strengths. They tend to be very passionate. It might drift over time in some areas, but they, if they're in, they're usually all in. And people with ADHD are often very creative because they think outside the box due to the multitude of fast-paced thoughts they have all the time. And these things can really bring benefits in a relationship to keep the flame alive. So in summary, ADHD can and does have a significant impact on relationships. And I think the important thing is about finding the right partner. So Russell A. Barkley, in his book, which I think is a really good foundation book for understanding about ADHD, even though it's quite old now. He says that one of the most important decisions a person with ADHD can make is marrying the right person, or getting together with the right person. And I think I would agree with him. It really can be the key to having a healthy relationship. And once your partner does understand about ADHD, things can really fall into place with them about where your strengths and weaknesses are, and you can both start to work together as a team with your strengths and weaknesses balanced out. So this is a time for reflection, where we reflect on how this information impacts on you and can review your experiences of relationships and what happened within them through a different lens. These videos go alongside my workbook that is available free of charge. That's this. This can be found on my website, drvickykleek.co.uk, free of charge to download. So how has ADHD, your diagnosis, affected your experience of romantic relationships, bearing in mind what we've spoken about just now? What have you realised that you never knew before about the impact of your ADHD on your partnerships? And what do you want to do with that information going forwards? I hope you have gotten something valuable from this pre-recorded webinar, and it's added to your understanding of you as a person, both your past and present. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.